Get her out of the jewelry store before she embarrasses herself. The words echoed across the marble showroom just as the rain outside Manhattan's Fifth Avenue windows began tapping softly against the glass. And at that exact moment, every employee inside Aurelius Diamonds thought they were looking at a poor woman who didn't belong there. None of them realized they were humiliating the one person who could destroy every career in the room with a single signature. Claire Whitmore stepped through the gold-framed entrance wearing a beige wool coat dampened by the February rain, simple brown boots, and a faded cream scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. At 34, she carried herself quietly, almost invisibly, the way people do after years of learning that wealth attracts attention, but simplicity reveals the truth about others. The chandelier above reflected across polished black marble floors worth more than most American homes, while display cases shimmered with diamonds under soft white lighting. Nearby customers in tailored coats and luxury handbags glanced toward Claire with immediate disinterest before returning to champagne flutes and velvet jewelry trays. Then came the look, the one she had seen 1,000 times before. A young salesman named Trevor paused mid-conversation the second he noticed her clothing. His smile tightened. His eyes moved from her wet boots to the old leather folder tucked beneath her arm. Inside that folder rested several legal documents tied together with a thin silver ribbon, though no one in the store could possibly know what they contained. "Can I help you?" Trevor asked carefully, though his tone carried the unmistakable edge of someone already hoping the answer would be no. Claire smiled politely. "I'd like to see the Aurora Sapphire necklace, if it's available." Trevor blinked once. The Aurora Sapphire collection was Aurelius' newest release, with pieces starting at nearly $80,000. Behind him, another sales associate quietly smirked. "The Aurora collection is reserved for scheduled private clients," Trevor explained. "Do you have an appointment with us today?" Claire gently removed one glove. "No. Appointment. I was hoping to see it briefly." That was when the older woman standing beside the diamond counter turned fully toward her. Vanessa Beaumont. Socialite. Donor. Wife of a real estate billionaire whose face appeared regularly in Manhattan magazines. Her pearl earrings caught the showroom light as she stared openly at Claire's outfit with visible disgust. Honestly, Vanessa muttered loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. They really need stricter screening at places like this. A few uncomfortable chuckles spread quietly through the showroom. Claire remained calm. She simply rested the leather folder against the glass counter. Trevor noticed the edge of an embossed gold seal partially visible inside the documents. But before he could focus on it, Vanessa stepped closer. "Sweetheart," she said with fake sympathy, "the souvenir shops are 3 blocks downtown." More laughter followed. Claire lowered her eyes briefly, though not from shame. From restraint. Because hidden beneath the sleeve of her coat rested something no one had noticed yet. A delicate gold bracelet carrying a tiny antique key charm engraved with the original Aurelius family crest. The symbol was nearly invisible unless someone looked closely. No one did. Trevor crossed his arms. "Ma'am, these pieces are extremely expensive." "I understand," Claire answered softly. "I'm specifically interested in the sapphire centerpiece." Vanessa gave a sharp laugh. Interested and able to afford are two very different things. The room grew quieter now. Even customers pretending not to stare had stopped browsing. Across the showroom, a security guard subtly shifted his posture, waiting for instruction. Claire looked toward the necklace display. For a moment, her composure flickered. The Aurora Sapphire rested alone beneath crystal glass, deep blue stones surrounded by white diamonds that caught the light like frozen stars. Her father had designed that piece 6 months before his death. Tomorrow would mark exactly 1 year since his funeral. "That necklace means a great deal to me," Claire said quietly. Trevor misread the emotion immediately. "I'm sure it does," he replied, his patience thinning. "But unfortunately this showroom isn't a museum." Vanessa folded her arms with satisfaction. This is exactly what happens when luxury stores stop protecting exclusivity. Then came the moment that shifted the air completely. Claire carefully opened the leather folder and removed a single cream-colored document. The top portion remained hidden beneath her fingers, but near the bottom sat an elegant gold signature beside the Aurelius corporate seal. Trevor only glanced at it for half a second before dismissing it entirely. "Ma'am," he said more firmly now, "unless you're making a serious purchase today, I'm going to have to ask you not to handle confidential paperwork at the counter. Claire slowly looked up. Her blue eyes remained steady, calm, almost sad. Confidential paperwork? She repeated softly. Yes, Trevor replied. People bring fake financial documents into luxury stores all the time. Vanessa shook her head dramatically. This is becoming embarrassing. Claire carefully returned the paper into the folder without argument. Then she noticed something hanging on the wall behind the diamond collection. A framed black and white photograph. 3 men standing outside the original Heiress workshop in 1952. One of them was her grandfather, the founder himself. A faint sadness crossed her face as the memory hit her unexpectedly. The smell of metal polish in his workshop. His old New York accent. The way he once told her, real luxury begins with how you treat people when nobody important is watching. But nobody in the showroom noticed the emotion in her eyes. They only saw the coat, the boots, the rainwater drying against her sleeves. Trevor finally exhaled impatiently and motioned toward security. Get her out of the jewelry store before she causes a scene. And just like that, the entire showroom fell silent. The silence inside Heiress Diamonds stretched uncomfortably as the security guard approached Claire with measured steps, his polished black shoes reflecting against the marble floor beneath the crystal chandeliers. Every customer nearby had stopped pretending not to watch. Champagne glasses hovered motionless in manicured hands. Expensive watches gleamed beneath soft showroom lighting while the quiet sound of rain continued brushing against the massive windows facing Fifth Avenue. Claire Whitmore stood perfectly still beside the sapphire display, her damp beige coat looking painfully out of place among tailored cashmere suits and velvet evening dresses. Yet somehow, she carried herself with more composure than anyone else in the room. Trevor straightened his tie as if restoring order after an inconvenience. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice into that polished corporate tone reserved for difficult situations. Heiress is a private luxury showroom. We simply cannot allow disruptions during client appointments. Claire slowly turned toward him. I did not raise my voice. Trevor hesitated for half a second before replying. That is not really the issue. Vanessa Beaumont gave a soft laugh into her champagne flute. Of course it is not the issue, she said. The issue is presentation. Her eyes drifted deliberately over Claire's coat, her worn boots, the faint water stains near the hem of her scarf. Luxury environments operate differently. Surely you understand that. Claire remained calm. I understand appearances matter here. Vanessa smiled thinly. Finally, some honesty. Nearby, a younger sales associate avoided eye contact entirely, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. But nobody interrupted. Nobody defended her. Because in rooms like this, expensive people rarely question each other publicly. The security guard stopped a respectful distance away from Claire. Miss, he said gently, almost apologetically, perhaps we can help you locate another store more within your needs. Claire looked at him kindly. Thank you, but I only came to see the necklace. Trevor exhaled sharply through his nose. The Aurora Sapphire is not available for public handling. Claire glanced again toward the deep blue stones resting beneath crystal glass. Her reflection shimmered faintly beside the necklace, simple and understated against millions of dollars in diamonds. My father believed sapphire represented loyalty, she said quietly, almost to herself. Vanessa rolled her eyes immediately. Everybody suddenly has a sentimental story when security arrives. More awkward laughter followed. Trevor folded his hands in front of him. Ma'am, perhaps if you scheduled an appointment in advance and provided financial verification, this process could have gone differently. Claire's eyes lifted slowly. Financial verification? For pieces over $75,000, yes. Vanessa smirked. Which means this conversation should have ended 10 minutes ago. Claire said nothing. That silence irritated them more than anger would have. Because people expecting embarrassment often became unsettled when dignity refused to disappear. Trevor noticed the old gold key charm hanging from Claire's bracelet again as she adjusted her glove. Tiny, antique, barely larger than a coin. The engraved crest looked strangely familiar, though he could not place it. Interesting accessory, Vanessa said with mocking curiosity. Vintage costume jewelry? Claire gently touched the charm with her fingertips. It belonged to my grandfather. Vanessa tilted her head dramatically. How touching. Trevor forced a professional smile. Ma'am, I really do need to ask you to leave now. Claire studied him carefully for the first time. He could not have been older than 28. Ambitious, sharp suit, expensive haircut, the type of young salesman who measured human worth in wristwatches and credit limits because New York had taught him survival depended on recognizing status instantly. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Across the showroom, another customer whispered quietly, "Who even walks into a place like this dressed like that?" The response came immediately. Someone trying to feel important for 5 minutes. Claire heard every word. Still, she did not react. She simply looked around the showroom slowly, taking in every detail. The ivory walls, the framed heritage photographs, the gold lettering above the entrance reading excellence since 1952. Her grandfather had chosen that exact font himself at a tiny workshop in Brooklyn before Heiress became an international empire. The memory hit her unexpectedly hard. She remembered sitting beside him as a little girl while he polished gemstones beneath warm yellow lamps. He used to tell her, "The moment luxury begins looking down on ordinary people, it stops being luxury." Trevor misread her silence entirely. "You know," he said carefully, "there is no shame in admiring beautiful things from afar." Vanessa nodded approvingly. "Exactly. People should stay within environments that suit them." Claire finally looked directly at her. Not angry, not intimidated, just steady. "And what kind of environment suits me?" The question hung in the air longer than anyone expected. Vanessa's smile tightened slightly. "I think you already know the answer." Claire gave the faintest nod, as if mentally confirming something important. Then she carefully picked up the leather folder again. As she did, a single cream-colored envelope slipped partially free. Trevor instinctively caught sight of the embossed gold lettering near the seal. Board of Executive Transfer Authorization. His expression flickered briefly with confusion before Vanessa interrupted with another cold laugh. "Please tell me she did not print fake corporate documents from the internet." Claire calmly slid the envelope back into the folder. "They are real." Trevor's patience finally cracked beneath the pressure of the watching crowd. "Enough," he said firmly. "This showroom serves serious clients only." Claire tilted her head slightly. "And what exactly defines a serious client?" Vanessa answered before he could. "People who belong here." The room went quiet again after that. Not loud quiet. Worse. The kind filled with judgment hiding behind expensive smiles and polished manners. Claire lowered her eyes for one brief moment, then looked once more at the sapphire necklace glowing beneath the lights. There was sadness in her expression now. Deep sadness. But beneath it sat something far more dangerous. Certainty. And none of them noticed it. The tension inside Heiress Diamonds thickened like heavy winter air as more people quietly drifted closer to the center showroom without pretending otherwise anymore. Expensive heels clicked softly across marble floors. A man in a charcoal overcoat paused beside the Rolex display just to watch. Two younger women, carrying designer handbags, whispered behind careful smiles while pretending to examine diamond bracelets. Nobody openly insulted Claire now. They did not need to. Their silence had already chosen sides. Trevor noticed the growing attention and straightened his posture even further. In luxury retail, humiliation became dangerous once witnesses gathered. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "this has already gone further than necessary." Claire calmly adjusted the sleeve of her beige coat. "Then perhaps it should stop." Vanessa Beaumont gave a quiet scoff. "Amazing," she murmured. "She still thinks she has the upper hand." The security guard shifted uneasily beside them. His name tag read Marcus Hale, a former police officer now working private security for high-end Manhattan businesses. Unlike the others, he no longer looked entirely comfortable. Something about Claire's composure unsettled him. Most people embarrassed in public either became defensive or emotional. Claire had become neither. She simply observed everything carefully, almost as if she were remembering details. Trevor noticed it too. Every display, every employee name tag, every security camera angle. Claire's eyes moved slowly through the showroom with quiet precision. Then she asked a simple question. "How long has this location been open?" Trevor blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me." "This store," Claire repeated softly. "How long?" 3 years, Trevor answered cautiously. Vanessa folded her arms. "Why does that matter?" Claire glanced toward the massive crystal chandelier overhead. "Because the original flagship used to have warmer lighting." The comment landed strangely. Trevor frowned slightly. The original flagship closed almost 20 years ago. Claire gave the faintest nod. I know. For the first time, Marcus looked directly at her old gold key charm again. He had seen that symbol before somewhere inside the building. He just could not remember where. Before he could think further, another voice entered the scene. What exactly is happening here? The words came sharp and polished from a tall woman approaching quickly from the rear offices. Lydia Carrington, Regional Operations Manager for Heiress, New York. Early 40s. Impeccably tailored black suit. Diamond earrings worth more than most cars parked outside. Employees immediately straightened when they saw her. Trevor visibly relaxed. Miss Carrington, he said quickly. This woman has been refusing to leave after multiple requests. Lydia turned toward Claire with the professional smile executives used when already assuming guilt. I am sure there has been some misunderstanding. Vanessa stepped forward immediately. Not at all. Your staff has actually been very patient considering the circumstances. Lydia's eyes swept briefly over Claire's coat, boots, scarf, and worn leather folder. That single glance told Claire everything. Judgment in places like this happened within seconds. Ma'am, Lydia said smoothly. Heiress serves private luxury clientele. We do occasionally receive visitors unfamiliar with how these appointments work. Claire remained calm. I only requested to view one necklace. The Aurora Sapphire Collection, Trevor added carefully. Lydia's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. I see. Vanessa laughed softly beside her. Apparently, she also carries mysterious legal documents. Several customers smiled quietly at that. Claire slowly rested her hand on the leather folder again. Not protectively, thoughtfully. Then she looked directly at Lydia for the first time. Do you know who designed the Aurora collection? Lydia answered immediately. Of course. It was commissioned under our executive creative department. Claire tilted her head slightly. That was not my question. The room went still again. Lydia's polished smile faded a fraction. Excuse me. Who designed it? Claire repeated. Lydia crossed her arms now. I do not believe that information is relevant. Claire gently touched the old gold key charm hanging from her bracelet. I think it is. Trevor exchanged a glance with Vanessa. The confidence in Claire's voice no longer sounded delusional. It sounded personal. Dangerous, even. Lydia noticed the shift instantly and stepped closer, lowering her voice. Listen carefully, she said coldly. Whatever point you are trying to make here, this is not the place for it. Our clients are uncomfortable. Claire glanced around the showroom. Nobody looked away. Interesting, she replied quietly. Because no one seemed uncomfortable humiliating me. Vanessa's expression hardened immediately. Humiliating you? Nobody humiliated you. You walked into a luxury showroom dressed like you slept in a bus station. A few nervous laughs escaped nearby customers before quickly dying out. Marcus visibly frowned at the comment. Claire, however, simply looked at Vanessa with calm eyes. My father used to say diamonds reveal character faster than mirrors do. Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically. And now she has inspirational quotes. Lydia finally lost patience. Enough, she said sharply. Marcus escorted her out. Marcus hesitated. Just briefly. But Claire noticed it. So did Lydia. Is there a problem? Lydia asked coldly. Marcus cleared his throat. No, ma'am. Claire slowly reached into the pocket of her coat, then removed a small silver cell phone. The movement instantly drew everyone's attention. Trevor looked irritated. Vanessa looked amused. Lydia looked suspicious. Claire calmly dialed one number. Then she waited. The entire showroom listened to the faint ringing in the silence. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. Then someone answered. Claire's voice remained soft. Hello? I am downstairs. She paused briefly while listening. Then she added one final sentence. Yes. I think you should come now. And before anyone could ask who she had called, the private elevator at the far end of the showroom gave a soft metallic chime. The soft metallic chime from the private elevator echoed across the showroom, and for one brief moment, nobody moved. Employees exchanged uncertain glances while customers subtly leaned closer, sensing the atmosphere shift beneath the polished calm of Heiress diamonds. Claire Whitmore slipped her cell phone quietly back into her coat pocket as if nothing unusual had happened. Yet the stillness in the room felt different now. Tighter. Trevor tried to regain control first. Private elevator access is restricted, he said firmly, though the confidence in his voice had weakened slightly. Who exactly did you call? Claire calmly adjusted the leather folder beneath her arm. Someone who works upstairs. Vanessa Beaumont let out a short laugh. Everybody suddenly knows somebody important when they are asked to leave. Lydia Carrington stepped forward again, sharper this time. Ma'am, this situation has gone beyond inappropriate. Claire looked at her evenly. Because I asked to see a necklace? Lydia's jaw tightened. Because you are refusing to respect boundaries. Boundaries, Claire repeated softly, almost thoughtfully. Nearby customers pretended to browse, but every eye remained fixed on the confrontation. A younger couple standing beside the Emerald Collection exchanged whispers while another man quietly lifted his phone lower against his chest, likely recording the scene. Marcus noticed it immediately, but said nothing. Even he sensed this situation was becoming dangerous in ways none of them fully understood. The elevator doors at the far end remained closed. Trevor seized the silence quickly. This store handles private transactions exceeding 6 figures every day, he said carefully, speaking louder now for the audience surrounding them. We have standards in place to protect both our inventory and our clients. Claire nodded once. And those standards begin with judging coats and shoes? A few customers looked away uncomfortably. Vanessa, however, only smiled colder. No, they begin with recognizing who belongs in elite spaces. Claire's eyes shifted slowly across the showroom again. Crystal lighting, diamond displays, gold trim imported from Italy, hand-stitched leather chairs positioned perfectly beneath framed heritage photographs. The entire store had once existed only as sketches on her father's drafting table. Yet here she stood being treated like an intruder. Interesting, she murmured quietly. Lydia folded her arms. What is? Claire looked directly at her. How quickly people confuse luxury with arrogance. The sentence landed harder than anyone expected. Vanessa scoffed immediately to break the tension. No one is confusing anything. This is a business, not a public museum. Trevor stepped closer to Claire now, lowering his voice into a final corporate warning. Listen, carefully. We are trying to handle this respectfully, but if you continue refusing to leave, we may need to formally document the disturbance. Claire raised one eyebrow slightly. Document it. Trevor blinked. Excuse me. Document all of it, Claire replied calmly. Every word. Marcus looked at her sharply after that. Something about the certainty in her tone sent a chill through him. People bluffing did not sound like that. Lydia noticed his hesitation again and immediately hardened her expression. Marcus, she said coldly. Escort her outside now. The security guard stepped forward reluctantly. Miss, please. Claire did not move. Instead, she slowly opened the leather folder once more. Several cream-colored legal documents rested inside beside a thick envelope sealed with dark blue wax. At the top corner sat the Aurelius corporate crest embossed in gold. Trevor's face changed slightly when he saw it clearly this time. Not because he understood it fully. Because deep down, he recognized it was real. Claire gently removed one folded sheet of paper and glanced at it briefly before sliding it back into place. Vanessa crossed her arms impatiently. This is honestly becoming pathetic. Claire finally looked directly at her. You seem very concerned about who belongs here. Vanessa smiled tightly. People spend their lives earning access to rooms like this. Claire nodded once. Some people build them. The room went completely silent after that. Trevor's expression flickered. Lydia's eyes narrowed instantly. Even Marcus froze slightly beside her. Because for the first time since Claire entered the showroom, her calm no longer sounded defensive. It sounded factual. Vanessa forced another laugh, though this one came thinner than before. You really expect people to believe you are connected to Aurelius? Claire did not answer immediately. Instead, she slowly walked toward the framed black and white founder photograph hanging beside the sapphire collection. The marble floor echoed softly beneath her worn boots while every eye followed her movement. She stopped directly beneath the portrait. 3 men stood in the photograph outside a tiny Brooklyn jewelry workshop in 1952, one holding blueprints, one polishing gemstones, one standing proudly beside the original Aurelius sign. Claire studied the image quietly. Then she touched the edge of the frame with her fingertips. My grandfather hated this photograph, she said softly. Trevor felt his stomach tighten instantly. Vanessa stared at her in disbelief. Lydia's expression hardened into something colder now. Fear disguised as authority. That is enough, Lydia snapped sharply. You will leave this showroom immediately. Claire turned slowly back toward them, completely calm, completely composed. You should be careful what you do next, she said quietly, because some doors in this company only open with this key. And with that, she gently lifted the small antique gold key hanging from her bracelet just as the private elevator doors finally began to slide open. The private elevator doors slid open with a soft mechanical whisper, and the entire showroom instinctively turned toward the far end of the marble floor. The atmosphere inside Aurelius Diamonds changed instantly. Employees straightened. Customers stepped back slightly. Even Vanessa Beaumont lowered her champagne glass. Two men in dark tailored suits exited first, both carrying tablets and wearing discreet silver Aurelius executive pins near their lapels. Behind them came a woman in her 50s with sharp silver hair and a navy cashmere coat draped over one arm. Evelyn Mercer, senior legal advisor to the Aurelius Executive Board. Trevor recognized her immediately from corporate training conferences and nearly stopped breathing. Lydia Carrington's face lost color for half a second before she forced herself upright again. Evelyn Mercer rarely visited showrooms personally. Ms. Mercer, Lydia said quickly, recovering her polished tone. We were not informed you were coming downstairs. Evelyn barely acknowledged her. Her eyes had already moved past everyone else in the room and landed directly on Claire Whitmore, standing beneath the founder's portrait. For one strange second, the older woman's expression shifted into something close to concern. Miss Whitmore, Evelyn said quietly. The room froze. Trevor blinked. Vanessa slowly lowered her glass. Marcus looked sharply toward Claire. Lydia spoke too quickly. You know her? Evelyn turned slowly toward Lydia with controlled disbelief. Of course I know her. Silence crashed through the showroom harder than any raised voice could have. Claire remained calm, one hand resting lightly against the leather folder beneath her arm, while the antique gold key charm glimmered softly beneath the chandelier light. Trevor suddenly replayed every second of the last 20 minutes in his mind and felt cold settle into his stomach. Evelyn stepped closer to Claire. I apologize for the delay. The board meeting upstairs ran longer than expected. Vanessa's confident posture weakened almost invisibly. Board meeting, she repeated softly. Claire gave a small nod. I understand. Evelyn's eyes drifted briefly toward Lydia, Trevor, and the surrounding employees. Years of corporate legal experience allowed her to read a room instantly. She saw the tension, the discomfort, the frightened silence. And most importantly, she saw Marcus still standing beside Claire as if midway through escorting her out. Evelyn's voice became noticeably colder. What exactly happened here? Nobody answered immediately. Trevor looked toward Lydia. Lydia looked toward Vanessa. Vanessa suddenly seemed fascinated by the diamonds in the nearest display case. Claire spoke first. Calmly. There was a misunderstanding. Evelyn studied her carefully. A misunderstanding involving security? Marcus immediately stepped back. I was instructed to escort Miss Whitmore outside, ma'am. The legal advisor's expression hardened. Trevor tried to recover the situation instantly. Ms. Mercer, we were simply following showroom protocol regarding unauthorized visitors and private inventory access. Evelyn slowly turned toward him. Unauthorized. Trevor swallowed. She did not identify herself. Claire quietly looked down for a moment. Nobody asked. The sentence landed heavily in the silence. Lydia stepped forward quickly before the situation worsened further. With respect, we had no reason to assume. Evelyn interrupted sharply. No reason to assume what? Lydia stopped speaking, because suddenly there was no safe way to finish that sentence. Around them, customers exchanged uneasy glances. The energy in the showroom had completely shifted now. The arrogance that filled the room minutes earlier had begun quietly collapsing into uncertainty. Trevor noticed something else too. Several employees were staring directly at Claire's gold key charm now. One older jeweler near the back display suddenly whispered under his breath, "That cannot be real." Marcus heard him immediately. "What is it?" The older jeweler hesitated before answering quietly. "That crest." His eyes remained fixed on Claire's bracelet. Only the founding family carried those keys. Vanessa laughed nervously. "This is absurd." But her voice no longer sounded certain. Claire slowly removed the bracelet from beneath her sleeve and held the small gold key gently in her palm. Under the chandelier light, the engraved Aurelius crest became unmistakably clear now. Trevor's face drained completely. He had seen that symbol before. Not in advertisements. Not in catalogs. Upstairs, on the restricted executive vault doors during management training. Evelyn noticed the realization spreading across the room and exhaled quietly through her nose. I strongly suggest everyone in this showroom chooses their next words very carefully. Lydia's composure finally began cracking at the edges. Miss Whitmore, she said cautiously, if there has been any discomfort today, I assure you it was never intentional. Claire looked at her calmly. Intent matters less than behavior. Nobody spoke after that. The room had become painfully still. Outside, rain continued falling against the towering windows while Fifth Avenue traffic blurred through gray afternoon light. Then Trevor's tablet suddenly vibrated sharply against the counter. He glanced down automatically. A company-wide executive alert had just appeared across all Heiress employee systems. Emergency board notice. All regional executives report to private conference level immediately. Authorization status pending final signature. Trevor frowned slightly. Then his eyes moved lower. Approval required. Claire Whitmore. His breath caught. Instantly, slowly, almost mechanically, he lifted his eyes toward the woman standing only a few feet away in the simple beige coat and worn boots. Claire noticed the fear entering his expression, but said nothing. She merely slipped the gold key back onto her bracelet and quietly adjusted the sleeve over it once more. No arrogance, no revenge, no satisfaction, just calm. And somehow that frightened them more than anger ever could. The silence inside the showroom no longer felt elegant. It felt fragile. Every employee at Heiress Diamonds stood unnaturally still beneath the crystal chandeliers while Trevor stared at the executive alert glowing on his tablet screen. Approval required. Claire Whitmore. The words repeated in his mind louder than the rain striking the windows outside. Yet across the marble floor, Vanessa Beaumont refused to let the atmosphere change. Pride had already carried her too far to retreat gracefully now. She stepped forward slowly, her designer heels echoing sharply through the quiet showroom. This is ridiculous, she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. One legal advisor appears, and suddenly everyone forgets basic standards. Evelyn Mercer turned toward her with visible disbelief. Mrs. Beaumont, I strongly suggest. Vanessa cut her off immediately. No, I am saying what everyone here is thinking. Several customers instantly looked down at the floor. Nobody agreed aloud anymore. That alone should have warned her. But arrogance often survived several seconds longer than intelligence. Vanessa gestured openly toward Claire's coat. Look at her. She walks in soaked from the rain carrying old folders and mystery keys. And now everyone acts as though she owns the building. Claire stood motionless near the founder portrait, calm blue eyes fixed on Vanessa without anger. Somehow that composure only made the room more uncomfortable. Trevor quietly lowered his tablet, suddenly wishing he could disappear entirely. Lydia Carrington attempted to regain control before the situation worsened further. Mrs. Beaumont, she said carefully, perhaps we should continue this conversation privately. Vanessa laughed sharply. Privately? Why? Because your employees suddenly realized they treated the wrong person badly. The sentence landed heavily. Too heavily. Lydia's jaw tightened. Evelyn Mercer folded her arms in silence. Marcus shifted uneasily near the entrance. But Claire still said nothing. That silence continued pulling the room tighter and tighter like invisible wire. Vanessa mistook it for weakness. I have spent 15 years shopping with Heiress, she continued proudly. My family donates to your charity galas. We helped fund your Hamptons expansion. And now this woman appears out of nowhere expecting special treatment while dressed like she wandered in from the subway. Trevor closed his eyes briefly. Too far. She had gone too far. Claire finally moved then. Slowly, deliberately. She walked toward the central diamond counter while every eye followed her across the marble floor. Her worn boots echoed softly beneath the chandelier light. Then, without a word, she placed the old leather folder carefully on the glass display case. The entire showroom leaned into the moment instinctively. Claire opened the folder with calm hands. Inside rested several cream-colored legal documents, a dark blue wax-sealed envelope, and one slim black binder embossed with the Heiress corporate crest in gold. Trevor's face lost what little color remained. He recognized that binder instantly now. Executive succession materials. Access restricted to board-level authorization only. Vanessa, however, still refused to understand what everyone else was beginning to realize. This proves nothing, she snapped. Anybody can print fake documents. Claire gently removed one paper from the folder and placed it flat against the glass counter. Nobody breathed. At the bottom of the page sat 6 executive signatures beside the official Aurelius board seal. Above them, in bold lettering, were the words transfer of controlling interest authorization. Lydia stared at the paper as if her mind refused to process what her eyes were seeing. That document, she whispered. Evelyn Mercer answered quietly, is authentic. A visible chill moved through the room. Customers exchanged stunned glances. One younger employee actually stepped backward. Vanessa's confidence flickered for the first time. No, she said immediately. There has to be some misunderstanding. Claire looked at her calmly. There has been one from the beginning. The sentence fell into the silence with devastating softness. Trevor swallowed hard. Miss Whitmore. Claire gently lifted the antique gold key from her bracelet and placed it beside the documents on the glass counter. Under the showroom lights, the engraved family crest shimmered unmistakably now. Marcus suddenly remembered where he had seen it before. 3 floors underground. On the private vault door beneath biometric security access. His stomach dropped instantly. Evelyn noticed the realization spreading across the room and quietly exhaled through her nose. That key, she said softly, opens the original Aurelius founder vault. Nobody moved after hearing that. Nobody even blinked. Outside, Manhattan traffic blurred through gray rain, while the warmth inside the showroom suddenly felt suffocating. Lydia finally forced herself to speak. Miss Whitmore, if we had known your identity, Claire interrupted gently, would you have treated me differently? Lydia froze completely, because there was no acceptable answer. Vanessa, however, made one final mistake. One final desperate attempt to preserve her pride. This is absurd, she said sharply. Even if she is connected to the company, appearance still matters in luxury business. People expect a certain image. Claire slowly turned toward her. Calm, steady, almost sad. Then she asked the question that silenced the entire showroom. Do you know what my father wore when he opened the first Aurelius store? Vanessa blinked uncertainly. Claire answered before anyone else could. Work boots covered in metal dust. The room went completely still. Evelyn lowered her eyes briefly. Trevor looked physically ill now. Lydia's hands tightened together at her waist. Claire gently closed the folder once more, leaving the gold key resting alone on the glass counter beneath the chandelier light, like a final warning no one in the room could ignore anymore. Then she quietly spoke a single name. Call Richard Hale. And suddenly, every executive employee in the showroom understood exactly how serious this situation had become. The moment Claire Whitmore spoke Richard Hale's name, the atmosphere inside Aurelius Diamonds changed completely. Employees who had spent the last 30 minutes standing confidently behind polished counters now looked frozen beneath the chandelier light. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Even the soft jazz music drifting through the showroom suddenly felt distant beneath the crushing silence. Then came another sound. The private elevator chimed again. Every head turned instinctively toward the far end of the marble floor as the gold doors slid open a second time. Richard Hale stepped out alone. Chief Executive Officer of Aurelius International. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal-tailored suit with a dark navy tie. The kind of man whose presence alone could quiet a boardroom worth billions of dollars. Trevor had only seen him in company broadcasts before. Lydia immediately straightened her posture. Vanessa Beaumont visibly inhaled with relief, clearly assuming the CEO's arrival would restore control to the situation. Richard Hale walked forward with measured steps across the marble floor, while every employee lowered their eyes respectfully. Then he saw Claire standing beside the founder portrait, and he stopped completely. The entire showroom watched the exact moment the color left his face. Richard Hale removed his glasses slowly. His expression shifted from surprise to disbelief, then to something much heavier. Regret. Claire, he said quietly. Not Miss Whitmore. Not ma'am. Claire. The familiarity of it stunned the room instantly. Claire looked at him calmly. Good afternoon, Richard. Nobody missed what happened next. The CEO of Aurelius International crossed the showroom floor directly past every executive employee every luxury customer, every diamond display worth millions of dollars, and stopped in front of the woman they had tried to remove from the building. Then Richard Hale lowered his head respectfully. The room went silent so fast, it almost felt physical. Vanessa's champagne glass slipped slightly in her hand. Trevor looked as though he might faint. Lydia Carrington's face had gone completely pale now. Richard spoke carefully, almost solemnly. "I am deeply sorry this happened." Claire's expression remained composed. "You should be." The simplicity of the answer somehow carried more weight than anger ever could. Richard glanced briefly toward the leather folder resting on the glass display counter beside the antique gold key. His eyes darkened immediately. "You brought the succession documents." Claire nodded once. "I intended to sign them upstairs." Trevor's knees nearly weakened beneath him after hearing that sentence. Succession documents. Upstairs. The realization spread visibly through the showroom now, like cold water. Vanessa stared at Claire in disbelief. Succession? Richard turned slowly toward the room, toward the employees, toward the horrified customers pretending not to stare. Then he spoke the words that shattered whatever remained of the old power balance inside the showroom. "Claire Whitmore is the majority heir to the Aurelius founding estate." Nobody breathed. Richard continued quietly. "As of this afternoon, pending her signature, she becomes controlling owner of Aurelius International." Somewhere near the diamond display, a customer audibly gasped. Trevor physically stepped backward against the counter. Marcus lowered his eyes immediately. Lydia looked completely stunned now, her executive composure collapsing piece by piece beneath the reality she could no longer deny. Vanessa Beaumont stared at Claire with open disbelief. "That is impossible." Claire looked at her calmly. "Why?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because for the first time all afternoon, she understood exactly what she had been judging. Not a poor woman. Not an outsider. The future owner of the entire company. Richard Hale turned toward the showroom staff slowly. Claire's grandfather founded Aurelius in a two-room workshop in Brooklyn 74 years ago. Her father designed the Aurora Sapphire collection before his passing last year. He glanced toward the necklace beneath the crystal display. "Everything in this room exists because of her family." The silence afterward felt unbearable. Trevor could no longer meet Claire's eyes. Lydia's hands trembled slightly at her sides. Even Evelyn Mercer remained quiet now, allowing the truth itself to speak louder than anyone else could. Claire finally stepped toward the central counter again. She gently picked up the antique gold key from the glass surface. The tiny crest reflected beneath the chandelier light, while every employee watched in absolute stillness. "My grandfather carried this key every day for 40 years, she said softly. "Not because it opened a vault, because it reminded him that every customer deserved dignity before luxury." Vanessa lowered her gaze immediately. Richard Hale spoke again, quieter this time. "Claire has spent the last year refusing public control of the company after her father's death." He looked toward her carefully. Today was supposed to be the official transfer. Trevor closed his eyes briefly in horror. They had humiliated the future owner of Aurelius International less than 1 hour before she was scheduled to sign executive control documents upstairs. Claire noticed the fear spreading through the room, but showed no satisfaction in it. No cruelty. No arrogance. She simply looked around the showroom one final time. The marble floors. The crystal lighting. The employees standing silently beneath the founder portrait. Then her eyes settled calmly on Vanessa Beaumont. "You were right about one thing," Claire said softly. Vanessa looked up slowly. Claire's voice remained steady. "Appearance does reveal character." And this time, nobody in the showroom dared say another word. No one inside Aurelius Diamonds seemed to remember how to move after Claire Whitmore spoke those final words. The marble showroom that had once felt powerful and exclusive now sat buried beneath a crushing silence of embarrassment. Customers who had quietly watched the humiliation earlier avoided eye contact entirely. Employees stood frozen behind glass counters sparkling with diamonds that suddenly looked insignificant compared to the weight of what had just happened. Vanessa Beaumont lowered her champagne glass carefully onto a nearby display tray because her hand was trembling too visibly to keep holding it. For the first time all afternoon, she looked small, human, stripped of the effortless superiority she had worn like jewelry since the moment Claire entered the showroom. Richard Hale remained standing beside Claire with his head slightly lowered. while Evelyn Mercer quietly gathered the succession documents from the counter. Trevor still looked physically shaken. Every sentence he had spoken replayed in his mind with unbearable clarity. Serious clients only. Financial verification. People who belong here. The words sounded uglier now than they had only minutes earlier. Lydia Carrington finally found her voice, though it came softer than before. "Miss Whitmore," she said carefully, "there are no excuses for how you were treated today." Claire looked toward her calmly. "No," she replied. "There are not." Lydia swallowed hard. She had spent years climbing corporate ranks by mastering presentation, exclusivity, and image. Yet standing here now, beneath the founder portrait, she suddenly understood how dangerous it became when people confused elegance with worth. Vanessa stepped forward slowly, every trace of confidence gone from her face. I did not know who you were." Claire's eyes rested on her quietly. That was the problem. The sentence hit harder than anger ever could have. Vanessa looked down immediately. Around them, several customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. One older man near the diamond display slowly removed his glasses, visibly ashamed that he had remained silent while the humiliation unfolded. A younger sales associate who had laughed earlier now stood motionless with tears forming quietly in her eyes. Nobody could hide behind luxury anymore. Not after this. Richard Hale turned toward the showroom staff. "Every employee in this building will attend mandatory review training beginning tomorrow morning." His voice remained controlled, but disappointment weighed heavily beneath every word. Aurelius was founded by craftsmen who served people with respect before they ever became wealthy. Somewhere along the way, some of you forgot that. Trevor lowered his head completely. "Sir, I am deeply sorry." Richard looked at him firmly. "You should apologize to her, not me." Trevor turned toward Claire, struggling to speak through the humiliation burning across his face. "Miss Whitmore, I judged you the moment you walked through the door." His voice cracked slightly. "I thought appearance told me everything I needed to know." Claire studied him quietly for a moment before answering. "Most people do." There was no cruelty in her tone. Somehow that made the shame worse. Trevor glanced toward the old gold key resting beside the leather folder. "I never even noticed the crest." Claire gave a faint nod. "Because you were too busy noticing my coat." The room went silent again. Vanessa finally spoke once more, her voice much smaller now. "I spent my whole life believing places like this were meant to separate people." Claire looked toward the founder portrait hanging on the wall. "My grandfather built Aurelius for the opposite reason." Vanessa followed her gaze slowly. Claire continued softly. "He believed jewelry mattered because it marked moments people loved. Weddings, anniversaries, family memories, not status." Outside the massive windows, rain continued falling across Fifth Avenue while the late afternoon light dimmed into soft gray reflections on the marble floor. The atmosphere inside the showroom no longer felt glamorous. It felt reflective, honest. Claire gently picked up the sapphire necklace case from the display counter and held it carefully in both hands. The deep blue stones shimmered beneath the chandelier light. "My father designed this collection during chemotherapy treatments," she said quietly. He said sapphire reminded him that loyalty survives hard seasons. Nobody spoke. Even Richard Hale lowered his eyes after hearing that. Claire carefully returned the necklace to its display. "Today was the first time I felt ready to see it in person." The weight of those words settled heavily across the room. Suddenly, the image of the woman in the beige coat no longer looked out of place beneath the diamonds. She looked exactly where she belonged. Marcus, the security guard, stepped forward slightly. "Miss Whitmore," he said quietly, "I should have stopped this earlier." Claire offered him a small, genuine smile. "You were the only person who looked uncertain." Marcus lowered his eyes humbly after that. Richard Hale finally gestured gently toward the private elevator. "The board is waiting upstairs whenever you are ready." Claire nodded once. Then she looked around the showroom one final time. At Trevor. At Lydia. At Vanessa. At the employees standing silently behind glass displays worth millions of dollars. "Luxury is not proven by what people wear," she said softly. "It is revealed by how they treat someone who cannot offer them anything in return." The words settled into the room like truth nobody could escape from. Claire picked up the leather folder, slipped the antique gold key back onto her bracelet, and calmly walked toward the elevator while every person inside Aurelius Diamond stepped aside to let her pass. And this time, Nobody looked at her coat anymore. The private conference floor above Aurelius Diamonds remained silent long after Claire Whitmore signed the succession documents. One by one, members of the executive board had stood from the long walnut table to shake her hand respectfully. But even among billion-dollar contracts and polished corporate speeches, the moment that stayed with everyone was not the signature itself. It was the memory of the woman in the beige coat, standing quietly downstairs while people decided her worth before learning her name. Nearly an hour later, the private elevator doors opened once again onto the showroom floor below. Evening had settled across Manhattan now, and the rain outside had softened into a silver mist drifting across Fifth Avenue beneath glowing city lights. The atmosphere inside Aurelius Diamonds felt entirely different from before. The loud confidence was gone. The whispered judgment was gone. Employees stood straighter now, not out of fear, but reflection. Customers spoke more quietly. Even the marble showroom itself seemed humbled somehow beneath the crystal chandeliers. Claire stepped out of the elevator carrying the same worn leather folder beneath her arm. The same simple coat. The same old boots still carrying faint traces of rainwater near the soles. Yet now every person in the showroom looked at her differently. Not because her appearance had changed. Because the truth had. Richard Hale walked beside her toward the center showroom. Trevor immediately stepped forward from behind the diamond counter, visibly nervous. "Miss Whitmore," he said carefully, "there is something I would like to ask." Claire stopped calmly. Trevor swallowed hard before continuing. "I know apologies cannot erase what happened today, but I hope someday I can earn back the standards this company was supposed to represent." Claire studied him quietly for a moment. Then she asked a simple question. "Why did you choose luxury sales?" Trevor seemed surprised by it. "Because I thought luxury meant success," he admitted honestly. Claire glanced around the showroom. "My grandfather used to clean jewelry counters himself after closing hours." Trevor blinked. "The founder?" Claire nodded faintly. "He said if a person becomes too important to treat others kindly, then success has already ruined them." Trevor lowered his eyes after hearing that. Claire gently reached into the folder and removed a cream-colored document stamped with the Aurelius executive seal. "Tomorrow morning," she said softly, "there will be a new employee development program focused on customer dignity and ethics." Trevor looked up uncertainly. Claire placed the document carefully into his trembling hands. "You will help lead it." His eyes widened completely. "After what I did." Claire's expression remained calm. People learn more from shame faced honestly than punishment delivered publicly. Nearby employees exchanged stunned glances. Even Richard Hale looked quietly impressed by the decision. Across the showroom, Vanessa Beaumont still stood near the sapphire collection, unable to leave. Her confidence had disappeared entirely now, replaced by visible regret. Slowly, she approached Claire one final time. "Miss Whitmore," she said softly, "I spent years believing wealth gave people value." Claire looked toward the founder portrait hanging above the showroom wall. "No," she answered gently. "It only reveals who they already are." Vanessa lowered her gaze immediately. This time, nobody laughed. Marcus stepped forward near the entrance doors, holding Claire's umbrella respectfully. "Your car is waiting outside, Miss Whitmore." Claire smiled faintly. "Thank you, Marcus." Before leaving, she paused beside the Aurora sapphire necklace one final time. The deep blue stones shimmered beneath the glass exactly as her father designed them. Richard Hale stood quietly beside her. "He would have been proud of today," he said softly. Claire's eyes remained on the necklace. "I do not think he would have cared about the board meeting." Richard looked at her carefully. Claire gently touched the glass display. "But he would have cared about whether people felt respected inside his store." Silence settled around them once more. Not uncomfortable this time. Thoughtful. Claire then removed the antique gold key from her bracelet and placed it briefly against the display case beneath the founder portrait. The tiny crest reflected softly beneath the chandelier light while everyone watched in silence. "Keep the original vault closed for one more week," she told Richard quietly. "I want the first policy change signed before we reopen it." Richard nodded immediately. "Of course." Claire slipped the key back onto her bracelet, adjusted the sleeve of her coat over it, and turned toward the entrance. Employees moved aside respectfully as she crossed the marble floor. No whispers followed her now. No judgmental glances. Only silence. Honest silence. Just before reaching the doors, Claire stopped and looked back once at the entire showroom. At the employees, the customers, the diamonds glowing beneath crystal light. Then she spoke the final words nobody inside Aurelius Diamonds would ever forget. The rarest thing in this building was never the jewelry. Her eyes moved calmly across the room. It was the chance to show kindness when nobody thought it mattered. The room went completely still. Marcus opened the doors for her as cool Manhattan air drifted softly into the warm showroom. Outside, a Blacktown car waited beneath glowing city lights while rain shimmered across the streets like scattered silver. Claire Whitmore stepped into the night, carrying nothing more than an old leather folder, a quiet sense of dignity, and the small gold key that reminded everyone who saw it that true worth was never measured by appearances. And long after she disappeared into the Manhattan evening, nobody inside Aurelius Diamonds looked at another ordinary coat the same